Ever wondered why London's skyline feels so different lately? Curious about how a city formerly known for its historic grandeur has transformed into something else entirely? And what's behind the rising tension and shifting moral landscape in the heart of the UK? Welcome back to Nowhere Diary. In this video, we'll talk about how the newest cancer of Western society, Islam, has reshaped London, exploring the changes that have made headlines and sparked debate. In recent months, London has witnessed a dramatic protest march led by Tommy Robinson, one of the most vocal anti-immigration figures in the UK. Joining him was English actor, musician and political activist Lawrence Fox, both leading a throng of over 10,000 people to Parliament Square. The crowd carried banners proclaiming, "This is London, not Londonistan," and chanted, "We want our country back," clearly expressing their frustration with the current state of affairs. The term Londonistan, a jab at the increasing Muslim population in London, was underscored by the prominent display of the St. George's flag. This flag, with its iconic red cross on a white field, has been a symbol of England since 1190 and is deeply tied to St. George, the military saint and the Crusades. The protest also brought to light the Met's two-tier policing, a point that former Home Secretary Suella Braverman had raised before her resignation. Robinson echoed these concerns, stating the police were lenient towards left-wing protesters, like those supporting Palestine, while cracking down hard on those opposing such demonstrations. This accusation suggested a disturbing trend of institutional bias, favouring refugees over English citizens, reflecting a troubling disregard by the government for its own people's concerns. At the rally, other speakers urged protesters to avoid renting out their homes to anyone who wasn't British. Some even styled themselves as defenders of native values, while others lamented the declining Christian birth rates. The message from the rally was loud and clear. Muslim immigrants, with their differing ideologies, cultures and lifestyles, are seen as a threat to the English identity and the values of the host nation. Yet, not everyone was on board with Robinson's stance. To his supporters, it was a patriotic stand. To his critics, it was a troubling sign of the far right's rise. Around 300 counter-protesters from the Stand Up to Racism group turned up, separated from Robinson's followers by a police cordon. They chanted slogans like "Nazi scum off our streets" and "Say it loud, say it clear, refugees are welcome here," and carried placards reading "Oppose Tommy Robinson" and "Stop fascists and the far right." This stark divide shows the government's blatant disregard for growing tensions, leaving many feeling that their concerns are being brushed aside in favour of an agenda that seems increasingly out of touch with the realities faced by ordinary citizens. Although the anti-Islam banners and the abrasive slogans chanted at Robinson's march hardly won them any allies, dismissing them as mere fascists or far right in an attempt to undermine their grievances would be a gross oversight. In 1968, Conservative MP Enoch Powell made headlines with his infamous Rivers of Blood speech, critiquing the Race Relations Bill and its lax immigration policies. Powell warned that in just 15 to 20 years, the black population would dominate over the white, accusing the nation of madness for allowing the annual influx of 50,000 dependents. He expressed disbelief that the country permitted immigrants to bring over spouses and fiancés whom they had never even met, painting a dire picture of Britain's immigration policies and its potential consequences. This historical perspective underscores the frustrations of many who see the government's current approach as a continuation of reckless policies, further alienating those who feel their concerns are being utterly disregarded. Sadly, Powell faced brutal backlash for daring to criticise the guilt-fueled push for multiculturalism. He was ousted from the Conservative Party's shadow cabinet under Edward Heath, mocked by the Beatles with jabs like "Dirty Enoch Powell," and saw his career reduced to rubble. These days, Powell's once controversial speech seems almost prophetic. His warning about an insane number of immigrants in 1968 looks tame compared to today's reality. The numbers have skyrocketed, with immigration figures increasing sixfold over just 4 decades.
This is not Karachi, it's London. Britain's policy of mass immigration has brought what one expert is calling demographic upheaval to the United Kingdom.
It's now a demographic certainty. Someday, the white native English will be a minority in their own country. It's just a matter of when.
Also the native Welsh and the Scots.
London has transformed into a city where ethnic minorities make up 2/3 of the population, while cities like Leicester, Luton and Birmingham now boast minority majorities. It's hard not to see Powell's dire predictions as disturbingly accurate, especially when the current government seems more intent on stifling dissent than addressing the mounting concerns. Islam has now become the predominant religion in the London area, with reports suggesting that more than 1/3 of Muslims are advocating for the implementation of Sharia law in the UK. The proliferation of Sharia councils and tribunals, now numbering anywhere between 80 and 85, is a serious concern. These councils handle everything from divorce and marriage to criminal issues, but they operate on personal biases and patriarchal interpretations, causing significant unease among women's groups. Meanwhile, the surge in London's violent crimes involving Muslims over the past 2 years is hard to ignore. Not only have there been high-profile incidents like the 2020 Streatham and Reading stabbings and the 2020 Pays Pool Women's Hospital bombing, but there have also been several notable cases from 2022 and 2023. In November 2022, Abdul Rahman carried out a knife attack near London Bridge, injuring several people before being restrained. August 2022 saw Mohammed Faisal stabbing a local resident in North London. In 2023, Asim Khan's machete attack in East London resulted in 1 death and multiple injuries, while Omar al-Jabari's shooting spree in West London left 2 dead and several wounded. This rising tide of violence, punctuated by these and other individual attacks, shows a predictable but equally troubling trend. Muslim violence is becoming alarmingly prevalent, while the government seems more focused on political correctness rather than tackling London's Muslim problem head-on. Professor David Coleman, a supernumerary fellow in human sciences and professor of demography at the University of Oxford, has been sounding the alarm about uncontrolled immigration, especially from the Islamic world. He's warned that this could lead to Finis Britannia, which essentially spells the end of Britain as we've known it. This isn't some far-off fantasy. It's becoming a stark demographic reality. There's a growing likelihood that the native English, along with the Welsh and Scots, will soon find themselves a minority in their own country. The only question is, how soon? Coleman has made it clear that unchecked immigration could indeed bring about this Finis Britannia. He's explained that this phrase captures the essence of what's at stake: the transformation of Britain into something unrecognisable compared to its past. Despite these serious warnings, the government seems more intent on brushing these concerns aside rather than confronting them head-on. Immigration has the potential to strengthen a nation, but it depends on whether the immigrants are willing to assimilate. Muslims, by virtue of their belief system that is not compatible with any other religious group, will never assimilate. They will always dominate. It could be any religion: Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism. Anywhere it goes, Muslim immigrants spread quickly, outnumbering the locals in its host country by 4 to 1. Take, for instance, the dystopian vision of Britain depicted in Children of Men. Set in 2027, the novel paints a grim picture of a country torn apart by ethnic division and civil unrest. Armed Muslim gangs clash with a government struggling to maintain control while deporting immigrants. While Britain's future may not be quite as violent as this fiction, we are perilously close to such a scenario. Yet, Rather than addressing these pressing concerns, the government seems more inclined to downplay or ignore the problem, leaving the public increasingly anxious about what lies ahead.
I don't mind what they say. That doesn't matter to me. My friend, wait, no. Come on, back off.
Don't touch me.
No, I will touch you. Back off.
Don't touch me. Call the police.
Move back.
Is Jesus not their prophet?
No, Jesus is God. No, it's not a prophet. That's only God. Wait, stop.
Come on, say it to my face. Say it to my face. I'm gonna soak your mother. Push you. Born and bred in South London. Stay here right now. Stay here right now. Huh? Push you. Just want to kill you. Here we go, my friend. Call the police, yeah, call the police. Only Muhammad though. No. Only Muhammad though. Take out your flag. Come on.
And they call Islam the religion of peace. Peace. What peace? Urban areas in London are now full of Muslims, while rural parts of the country seem to be holding on to a more traditional English identity. This growing divide shows a predictable trend. Experts often suggest it might take 40 or 50 years before native Britons become a minority, but that's just a load of nonsense. The reality is, the shift could happen much sooner. Take a look at places like Luton, or consider the Troublebry, Briblebury, Ingi, Ingfrey and Ring. Your experiences, and reported in Cologne, these offer a glimpse into what we might face ahead. The trajectory points towards drastically increased violence and sexual violence against Christians and other non-Muslims, along with a push for Sharia law. The potential changes are nothing short of drastic. There are significant elements within Muslim communities advocating for their practices, like Ditari laws and marriage customs, to be formally recognised in British law, or in extreme cases, to completely replace it. Back in 2016, over 500,000 non-British citizens made their way to the UK. While EU rules made it tricky for Britain to halt migration from within Europe, it still resulted in a significant influx of European migrants. The government's handling of this situation seems to be a major part of the problem, failing to address the complexities and growing concerns with any real sense of urgency. Brexit, unfortunately, failed to curb the flood of immigrants from non-European Islamic countries due to the Tories implementing left-leaning immigration policies. But if the Tories couldn't make any headway on this issue, we shouldn't hold our breath for Starmer to deliver any better. With his liberal leftist stance, Starmer's default position is pro-Muslim and pro-immigrant, leaving no hope for a shift in policy. British schools are undergoing dramatic changes as well, as the majority of students now come from non-British backgrounds, and British foreign policy and military alliances are shifting too. England is now unrecognisable from its former self. The English Defence League used to chant, "We want our country back," during their protests against the Islamisation of Britain. Sadly, that call now seems to be echoing in a land that has already transformed beyond recognition. Once upon a time, the British Empire was famously dubbed the empire on which the sun never sets. Today, that phrase feels as faded as the empire itself, mirroring the decline of British society. For centuries, the comfort and luxuries enjoyed by the empire were built on the backs of plundered wealth, leading to an era of complacency and ultimately post-colonial guilt. This guilt paved the way for endless concessions to former colonies, eroding a once strong English identity. The obsession with Islam didn't help either. Starmer, to make good on his promise to grant the 18 demands of Muslim voters before he became Prime Minister, has recently changed the legal definition of Islamophobia. This only served to muddy the waters further. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has publicly blamed Western allies for pushing Saudi Arabia to invest in mosques and madrasas abroad, supposedly to keep Moscow at bay during the Cold War era. But here's the kicker. Without a solid religious counterweight to radical Islam's fervour, any concerns voiced by any non-Muslim white Brit will only be dismissed or ignored, just as Enoch Powell's warnings were 4 decades ago, and Tommy Robinson's recent protests were dismissed as far-right. The decline of Christianity in the UK is now starkly apparent. Once a bastion of Christian values, the country now sees its Christian majority overtaken by a growing wave of atheism, secularism, and materialism. This shift is largely due to figures like Richard Dawkins, who has spent years railing against Christianity, only to now find himself scrambling to backpedal. And even then, he's doing it all wrong.
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it would matter if we substituted any alternative religion. That would be truly dreadful.
Well, which brings me to my supplementary point, which is that, as we know, church attendance is plummeting, but the erection of mosques across Europe, I think 6,000 are under construction, and there are many more, are being planned. So do you regard that as a problem? Do you think that matters?
In London, where secular individuals would have previously been Christian, Islam is now the dominant religion. Starmer, ever eager to appease the leftists, has fully delivered on his promises to the Muslim community. Whether it's meeting their 18 demands, adopting a legal definition of Islamophobia stifles free speech, or endorsing a woke Met with their clearly biased 2-tiered policing. London has now succumbed to the cancer known as Islam. If you're a Christian Brit, the time to act is now. Start by inviting them to really study the Quran, with the goal of making it clear that Islam isn't just a religion, but a political ideology with a long and contentious history. It's important to get atheists, agnostics, liberals, and even some moderate Muslims to really dive into the Quran and understand the true nature of its evil ideology. If you don't know where to start, look up Dr. J. Smith. Islam is the only religion that can't get along with other religions, and Muslim immigrants are the only ones who struggle to integrate with non-Muslim host countries unless they're subjected to heavy-handed measures. Atheists and liberals don't stand a chance against the spread of Islam. In fact, their smug attitude was the only thing Muslims needed to transform London into Londonistan. And that's it for this video. Please like, share with your friends to spread awareness, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon for more. Thanks for all the love and support.